Hey everybody. Hello. Testing. We are going live on Facebook right now. I am Sean Ventura from the Lights Camera Pro podcast. I'm here with Kevin Gootee and Kevin Israel of the Gutting the Sacred Cow podcast. And I am sponsored today or partnering today with a product called Restream. It's a software, and I'm going to play the ad right now and talk over it a little bit. So hold on. Trying it out today. I'm going to try it out tomorrow, but you can see I have their logo here and I have their referral link in our description, which is the Facebook Live post. So I've never done an ad before. That's my first ad. How did I do, guys?
Magical.
Totally magical.
Yeah.
So here we are. Thanks for doing this, guys. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having
us.
This is really cool. The last couple of Facebook Lives that I did with two co-hosts, they were sitting in the same video, so they're kind of like sharing the video. This is the first time we're in three different places. So you guys are in both of your apartments or houses?
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Cool. So we're going to talk with Kevin and Kevin today about their podcast. One of the Kevins also has a couple more podcasts. We're going to talk about movies that are awful and great at the same time. That's what their podcast is about. So, guys, I'm just going to hand it over to you if you want to talk about how you started your podcast, how you got together. I know you're both comedians, and how you came up with the name, and then we'll go from there.
Okay. How did we start this? So I've done several podcasts in the past, a few TV shows I'm working on as well. But I've always been a fan of films, and I'll put my opinion on Facebook a lot, and people will debate, we'll go back and forth. And then Kevin Israel and I have known each other for a bit here and there, more Facebook than anything else. We're not too far from each other distance-wise. But we'd always go have some repartee on each other's Facebook posts about films. And when I had the idea for Gutting the Sacred Cow, and just for your viewers, here it is in a 15, 30-second pitch. Gutting the Sacred Cow is different than any other movie podcast you ever heard of. Why? Because what we do is we invite guests to come on to pick a film that they absolutely hate or find overrated. But here's the twist. The film can't be just Friday the 13th Part 6. I mean, anyone can dunk on that. Yeah. The film has to meet one of three criteria. It has to be a financial success, or a critically acclaimed film, or a widely beloved film. So it's going to take, again, anyone can dunk on an Halloween Part 5, but it's going to take skill to bring down something of the likes of Goodfellas, Casino, throw Pulp Fiction, something like that, The Matrix. So we want people to come on who can argue a film with some skill why one of these well-loved or successful or acclaimed films stink. So we're a weekly episode. We air pretty much every Monday morning. Our new episodes are dropped. And you can find us on YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, Google, iHeartRadio, Spreaker, Stitcher, damn near anywhere a podcast, whatever platform you're on. And as I said before, YouTube. So now we're also joining forces there.
Cool. When you say YouTube, are you posting video podcast?
Yes. Yep. We are the entire episode live, as well as I pick 3 clips I think that are fun or informative, and I space those out. So the new episode will drop on a Monday, and then Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, you'll see little, 30 to 90-second clips on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday.
Okay.
Yeah, and so like Evan said, we knew each other mostly through social media and through the stand-up comedy circuit in the New York, New Jersey area. And he had the idea for the podcast. He put it up one day that he was thinking about doing this podcast. I've done a couple of different types of podcasts in the past. I did a couple of movie review podcasts, a couple horror review podcasts, and I decided that I didn't want to do another podcast where, and Kevin and I talk about this a lot, that a lot of comics have podcasts where they just talk, where it's just them talking about whatever. And it could be, they're drinking beer, smoking weed, just sitting around and talking. And you don't need a podcast for that. You can go to any coffee house or Starbucks and get that. So I decided I didn't want to do one of those podcasts. I was kind of in the market to find something, and I've been trying to come up with an idea. And Kev posted that he was looking to do a movie review podcast where it would be guests bringing down popular, iconic movies. And I was like, oh, that's it. And I reached out to him and I was like, dude, I'm in. And he called me. I don't think I even hit send, and he called me and he was like, let's do it. And we've been doing it, now 6 months now?
Yeah, early October. I think October 4th is our start date.
Nice.
And, in our 30 plus episodes, we've learned a lot, we've grown a lot. But I got to say, we've really stuck true to the overall theme of Kevin's original idea, and it's worked. We've had great feedback on the overall concept, because anybody can review a movie, but this is just a real unique spin, and I always give Kevin a lot of credit for coming up with the idea and having the foresight to bring on somebody as talented as me.
Very true.
He's a lucky guy. So I love the logo. The logo's kind of fun. It's all animated. It looks cool. And are you guys getting, just out of curiosity, are you guys getting a big amount of reach and views on YouTube? Because I wasn't. I switched to Facebook Live, and now every one of these is reaching like 400 or 500 people, whereas my YouTubes are reaching like 25. Any insight on that? How does it look for you?
The YouTube is our worst platform by far. Our only time that it does spike is when we have a guest who has a lot of followers. So
right.
our most recent episode is with Anthony Acumia, and by far and away, this has been the biggest episode on YouTube. Podcasts are still our bread and butter where it comes to listens and such. I mean, the episode with Anthony has, right now, I'm looking at it, 417 views. And not we're not counting the clips either, just the podcast episode itself. But again, all podcasts is where we started. We just decided to do YouTube only because Ralph, God damn it, I just blanked on his last name, Sutton from oh my God, Gas Digital, the Legion of Skanks podcast guys and all those other ones. I've become kind of friendly with him, and he's been almost a mentor for me, where he's been offering me a lot of great advice. And he said, hey, man, with coronavirus the way it is, people aren't going to the gym. People aren't driving to work. People aren't on the subways listening to podcasts near as much. I'm sure your number's going to show that. He goes, YouTube's where it's at. People are watching stuff, but while they're at home, stuck at home, in quarantine. So get off your ass and put the episodes on YouTube. So I said, yes, sir, and did it. So at least it's another way for people to kind of put it on, and they can have it on in the background while they're working and such. So it's good. It's just not, we don't have that big of and again, we've only been on YouTube now, I want to say 2 months. Mm-hmm. So again, it takes a longer while to build that up, I guess. But yeah, I mean, unless you're paying for YouTube to boost stuff, or it's a huge guest, people are tweeting with that link in there. It's not, we're not getting that kind of love that we are with the podcast, not by a country mile.
And who's your hosting service? Are you using Anchor or someone else?
I use Podomatic.
Okay. And are you guys talking into your phones, or like when you're not on video, are you doing the phone or the computer with the headset and the mic?
So we record everything all in one shot. I record it on Skype. I have a mic right here. Mm-hmm. That's my voiceover mic, so I've just kept that. Kevin has a mic as well. So I record from Zoom. I just take the audio, cut it up where I have to, as well as the video, all at the same time, and then I mix the audio. I just do click removal and compression, and then upload that to Podomatic. So and YouTube is going to cut it up as accordingly, and insert clips and character generation, and away we go. Right. So that's how we do it.
And as far as guests, when you have a guest on, so you're doing Skype and Zoom also?
Just Zoom.
Just Zoom, no Skype.
We used to do Skype in the beginning when we had a studio where we're cool with Jim Andrinos, and his studio is about a half hour, 45 minutes away from us.
Yeah.
I'm coming south, Kevin's coming north. So we'd meet there. We'd have in-studio guests, but when Corona hit, we said, well, we're sure as shit not shutting down now, especially with some momentum that we had. So we said, we're just going to do Skype. And I sat down and for a day or two and just banged out people I found on Twitter who fit our demographic, people who have movie backgrounds, movie podcasts, people I know or Kevin knows, comic book fans. That's Kevin's realm. I do some stuff with Sirius Radio, so I had some Sirius Radio guests on. I'm on the Compound Media every month on the morning show with Bill. Kevin's gotten on there a few times as well. So that's how we've been branching out with guests, but mostly with Twitter. I'd reach out to these people on Twitter and say, hey, I see you have a podcast. We'd like to have you on as our guest. Here's our format. And 90% of people are like, hey, that's a great idea. Let's do it. And
everybody's really responsive.
It's been easy, really. So then we just have them on Skype, and I'm pretty sure when this is all quarantine, as we know it, is all said and done, we just probably may end up still doing it from Zoom because it's just that easier.
Yeah, it's so much easier than going into a studio and all that. What editing software are you using? Audacity or Audition? What do you?
I use Audacity for the podcast, and I use iMovie for the video.
Okay.
So, but yeah, and all of our guests right now, this is the list I have. You see here, we are booked until mid-August, and we have 3 or 4 episodes right now that we haven't even aired yet. They're just sitting there for in case of emergency break glass kind of thing. So.
And are you working with any sponsors? Or are you doing promo swaps? How are you promoting the podcast? Is it mostly social media?
We had an advertiser, but he lost his job. It was a card game. He lost his job because of Corona, so he couldn't pay us anymore. So we had one for a bit. We're trying to get out there. We hit up a bunch of breweries, local breweries in Jersey, New York, and 0.0 said yes. So that's the
rough
rub.
time looking to juice money out of anybody.
Yeah. I know a few people. We can hit up the minute this ends. I just don't want to hit them up now because I know for a fact that they have businesses, but they're not obviously really working well now. But again, that's nice to get some money in the meantime. But right now, we're just focusing on putting out A, kick-ass, top-notch content, and B, getting really those top-notch guests, and of course, C, expanding our social media presence, which we really have been doing, especially in the last month with Twitter alone. I want to say it's now Kevin and I have increased it, fourfold plus. So we're getting more response, we're getting more traction. People are noticing us. And,
cool.
and again, with all positive reaction, like Kevin had said earlier.
Yeah, I was talking to these 2 guys yesterday from Ottawa, Canada, who have a sports podcast. And
Let me guess, it's about hockey.
No, I thought it was going to be about hockey too, about the Oilers or the Maple Leafs or whatever.
That's Senators' territory in Ottawa.
Yeah, so, but they do all the sports, NFL, baseball. And they actually go to a couple local breweries and do their podcast from there, which drums up a lot of interest. All the people are asking what it is, and then, I don't know, they get some beers from the brewery or whatever, and they're trying to work out sponsorship. So that's another cool.
We had this conversation not even 3 days ago, Kevin and I.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be cool to do something live from a brewery or something, have the noise in the background. That's what they said.
Yeah,
all right. Can we talk horrible movies that are great? Am I misunderstanding this? Because I think like Face Off, John Woo's Face Off, was the first thing I thought of when I looked at your description. It's like an awful movie, but it's a great movie. It's got Nick Cage, it's got Travolta, and their faces come off and they switch it. It's a ridiculous premise. But is that what you're talking about? That the movie is awful and good at the same time?
No, it's we don't pick the films. The guests pick the films. They pick a film that they hate or find overrated. Everyone picks that film. So Anthony Cunha picked Face Off. So
he did. Okay.
He chose that one. So then we say, and sometimes the guests pick a film that we both hate. Sometimes the guests pick a film that we both like. And once in an absolute blue moon, they pick a film that splits between Kevin and myself. Right. One of us likes it, one of us hates it.
Cool. And when you guys say that you're comedians, do you go out and do stand-up in New York and New Jersey still, or are you in an improv group?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm around. We're both around. Kevin's been at it for 20 years now. I've been at it for 10. But yeah, we haven't done stand up since what? Early March.
March, yeah.
Right, right. Yeah, no, I was talking, I think I told you about Lace Larrabee, who's a big comic in Atlanta, and she tours the country. I interviewed her, and she said that, you know, it's going to be half as many people, and they're going to have masks on the mics and all this stuff, and doors open. But I think actually a couple of places in Atlanta have opened up. Has anything opened up in New York and New Jersey?
Nope.
Nah,
It's gonna
nothing.
be a struggle. When this closed down, Kevin and I both had a ton of cancellations. I lost about 35 gigs overnight, and
Wow.
it's not going to come back right away. I know there's a lot of people trying to kind of force it back. People are doing outside shows. I've done a couple Zoom shows. There are some clubs in other areas of the country trying to open up, but I feel like people are still so unsure of what's the right thing to do and proper safety precautions
Right.
that until people can sit comfortably in a club, which is like they did before all of this, it's going to be really hard to bring it back because comedy it's a social experience. It's a group mentality. I would rather be in a room. I would rather play a room that fits 60 and has 75 packed in than one that seats 1,000 and has 800, because you want that tight energy and you just can't do it right now. So until the authorities above say all's clear, we can try to make it happen and we can try to kind of string it together, but it's going to be really hard to get it to where it was and bring the audiences in.
Right. My buddy Greg, Greg Liptak, he does a comedy night in his backyard, and he has this big tree, and people sit around the tree, and he hosts an open mic at one of the bars in Atlanta. But even though there's only like 50 people there, it's one of the best nights that I've ever been to. I mean, there's all comics coming in from New York and LA and Chicago and some of the best Atlanta comics, and we just laugh our butts off, man. It's hilarious.
Cool.
So
yeah, some people are doing that here in Jersey too. I knew a few people who went over to a mic in a backyard to do that. People have done it in the back of trucks. They'll have sound systems.
Mm-hmm.
They've done that. So people are coming up with some pretty original ways to keep comedy going with social distancing at the forefront.
And you were mentioning, Kevin Gootee, that you worked at Sirius XM and you guys were trying to do some stuff on TV or voiceover or something. Can you tell us about the other stuff that you do?
Yeah, no, I don't work at Sirius XM. I've just been a guest on several shows there.
Okay.
No, the other stuff I do is I have a show called Comics Watching Comics. It's Mystery Science Theater 3000 meets Last Comic Standing. And you can see it on Amazon Video right now, Amazon Prime, so you can see it for free. Seasons 1 through 8. So we're just trying to give intermediate comics another avenue of exposure. So we tape the comics doing their set. I take the footage to my house, and I have panelists who have been a lot more established and a lot longer in the business than I have, and maybe some well-known faces you might recognize. And we sit there, we watch the footage, we'll make jokes about it, we'll crack jokes with each other, we'll bust each other's balls. We'll point out things that the vet panelists see from the comics, saying, hey, that's a great joke, or that setup's fantastic, but it's not quite there yet. Or once in a while, hey, people flat out suck, and it's we take them down, or we put them on our shoulders, either or. And every season, at the end, we pick a winner, and the winner will then had performed at a showcase we did at Gotham Comedy Club in the city in Manhattan, two years ago or so. And so I'm trying to maybe get it off of Amazon and get onto a network where the real money is to be made. So that's what we have with Comics Watching Comics. And for football, I'm a big football guy. I'm a big NFL bettor. I do a show called Fantasy Football Jibber Jabber with myself and Gerard Heron, another comic buddy of ours. And what it is we combine two things: fantasy football advice, which you see plenty of on ESPN, and gambling advice. You always see one but never both in the same place at the same time, and that's what we do. Plus, we're funny. So we make it a fun show for half hour, 40 minutes or so, where every week during the NFL season we give you our top and worst fantasy plays of the week, as well as NFL bets. And I had a pretty good 2 years in a row where I was over 60% against the spread. So that'll be starting back up in mid-late August, and then of course with the NFL start, we'll start then.
Very cool. Yeah, I don't know about the NFL fantasy, but my brother does the baseball fantasy, and we've gone to a couple of tournaments where people were winning like 300 grand.
Yeah, I do baseball. I do baseball too. Of course, that unfortunately has been shelved.
Yeah,
And
we were
so,
talking to these guys yesterday. We don't know if the NFL is going to happen with this Ezekiel Elliott thing and the Texans getting COVID, and it really doesn't look like baseball is going to happen. NBA's on the fence. I mean, a lot of sports might have to just take the fall off.
I think baseball will start. I don't think they're really going to let it go down to and have a non-season, especially after they've been sucking wind with performance in the sense of fans in the stands, viewership also being down. They really can't afford to do this because up in 2022, there's a new labor agreement negotiating where they have to go in there and figure it out. And a lot of the owners and the players are so against each other because the owners took the players to the woodshed last negotiation. So there very well could be a strike in 2022. So the last thing they want is to not to have baseball this year, then next year have baseball, and then possibly have a strike the following year, and then risk losing baseball and a lot of the fans altogether. So I think they're going to get their shit together and just hammer it out. I know 50 games is not exactly ideal at all. Who's kidding who? But I think they're going to do whatever it takes just to make sure there is some kind of baseball, albeit a watered-down schedule.
Cool. And Kevin Israel, are you doing anything else besides? So you're doing the podcast, you're doing comedy. Obviously, you're not right now. I know that. But are you doing voiceover, or are you guesting on TV shows or anything like that?
Yeah, I do a little voiceover work for various radio stations for different comedy pieces. And stand-up comedy keeps me pretty busy. And that was always I got into, like a lot of people get into stand-up comedy to do other things. You know, they want to be an actor, they want to get on TV or something. I got into stand-up comedy because I wanted to be a comic. So I really focused on building up those relationships and the ability to work the road and perform as much as possible. I was working every weekend, so that was always my goal. And then everything else was kind of supplemented it. You know, you talk to most comics, they'll say, yeah, I started doing a podcast because that's just what comics do. And which is also why I'm doing this podcast, because I didn't want to just do a podcast just because that's what comics do. I really love the idea of what we're doing. I love talking about movies. Kevin and I have great chemistry, and we have fun with the guests. And even when the guests aren't maybe all the way up to par, we still drag them across the line. And it's sometimes it's work, but it's fun work, and I think we really enjoy doing it. But doing this stuff, no matter how much you love it, part of it always becomes work. And God bless Kevin, because he does 90% of the grunt work. But it really is just about being so active on social media and just staying in people's faces to the point where you think you're being annoying, but if you sleep for a minute, people will forget you and find somebody else.
Yeah.
So you constantly be churning out content above and beyond just the podcast, which we do. Kev does a great job leading the charge on creating lists and fun posts and keeping people engaged. And when we're not immediately releasing another episode during the week. So it's fun. It's a work of passion, but it is work.
Yeah.
A lot of work.
And it's a lot of work. Do you guys have a favorite episode that you did recently, or that was just a lot of fun? Was it the Kumia or something else?
Kumia was great. I would say, honest to God, our last 3 in a row have been nothing less than a 9.
Yeah.
Kumia doing Face Off. Bill Schultz doing Independence Day, who's a favorite of ours. He also did episode 3, which was Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. Bill's a guy who was on Fox News, on Red Eye, which was on the Fox channel, and he also does the morning show at Compound Media. I love him. I adore him. He's funny as hell. He's quick, and he's got such an acerbic wit and insanely quick on his feet. So whatever episode you see him on, you're in for a treat. Dave Landau, who's before him, did Philadelphia, and when I heard Philadelphia, I go, this is going to be good. Because that really is a tough one to go after without seeming insanely callous. But
right.
Dave was a surgeon. I would say the last 3 in a row have been gangbusters. I'll also throw out, I really loved when Oh boy, who else did we always talk about? I'll throw another one out. The one that split Kevin and I, and that's Spaceballs with Jeff Paul. I hate Spaceballs. Kevin loves Spaceballs.
I love
Jeff Paul
Spaceballs.
hated Spaceballs. I hate it.
You love Spaceballs because you're a human with a soul.
Exactly.
Well, we have to work on upping your sense of humor, quality, and your standards here, Sean, because it's a
Yes.
very dumb, dopey film. But
Oh,
some
it's
people
so
like
fun.
it, but then we call them troglodytes where I come from. But no, so I would say the Jeff Paul episode is great because you get to hear Kevin and I go back and forth with each other. And like I said, the last three, John Fugelsang did a good job with Gone with the Wind. Jude Angelini did Birdman. David, the producer, did the Goonies. Goonies, of course, an 80s staple for guys of our age, I'll say. And a lot of people, I think that's the biggest reaction we got because
controversial.
What's that?
That was one of the most controversial episodes.
Exactly, because people were like, how do you go against Goonies? I mean, you watch it, man, it doesn't hold up, but a lot of people hold that film near and dear to their hearts. And the biggest compliments we received were, at first, it's like, oh, you guys are going to try and trash the Goonies. You suck. Yeah. But then when they listen to the episode, and if they rewatch it, they go, you know what? You guys made a lot of points because I was yelling at my phone in the beginning or my tablet or whatever they listen to the podcast on. And they said, we definitely made great points and changed your minds, at least on several points with the Goonies. So those are my favorites. What about you, Kevin? What do you think?
I mean, for me, it's an easy take, but having Anthony Cumia on was just awesome for me because I was a huge Opie and Anthony fan back in his WNEW days. I started listening in '99 and listened through to when they had to go to Sirius XM, and I started listening to him when I started doing stand up. And I listened to him have all the big comics on, Patrice, Jim Norton when he first started coming on, Bill Burr, just all the, and I just always wanted to be up to that standard of one of those guys. So getting to do the podcast with him on it was a real trip for me. I tried not fanboying out too much, but it was a really cool experience, and definitely validated Kevin and my work to getting to have somebody who's at his professional level and is nationally and internationally renowned for his personality and what he does, and having him on our podcast, and he had fun. He liked it. He had fun. He wanted to do it, and so that was really cool.
Very cool. And so at the end, we'll go if you guys want to talk about any of your websites or where people can find you, and eventually go see your shows and see your podcasts and stuff. But before that, can you just talk about advice you would give to people who are starting a podcast? Maybe a comedy podcast, maybe talking about movies, what you've learned in the last 6 months.
No one gives a shit if it's four people, as Kevin said, sitting around a table. The only people to master that are really Legion of Skanks. Those guys are masterful at that because they're all stand-up pros. So if it's just you and your buddies, no one cares. Right. Unless you have a hell of a hook. And that's what the difference is between us and everybody else. I've done 2 other podcasts where it was that. I did the Safe Word podcast with Monica Vito, where I had comedy friends of ours. We came and we sat and we shot the shit. Boring. It didn't take off, or didn't get any traction, I should say. Barely. Then I did the Sportsbook Box Office podcast with the aforementioned Jeff Paul, where we sat and we talked movies and sports. Boring, because everyone's doing it. You need to have a hook. You need to have segments. Something people look forward to. Like, oh, I get more people texting me or hitting me up saying, I love we do a section called 5 Fun Facts, where I look up facts about the movie that we're talking about that I think are funny. Or my personal favorite, I think it's Kevin's too, is the Amazon 1-star reviews. So I go on Amazon and I pull off the funniest 1-star reviews that people give the film, and it's an absolute joy to watch people who have not yet mastered 3rd grade English try and write a cohesive statement about Face Off or whatever film it is. Right. So having segments, having a hook, it's mandatory. Just don't say, as Kevin said before, hey, we're in comedy, we're comics, we have to have a podcast. No, don't. No one cares about what your thoughts are unless you have a huge name, you're a huge following. No one cares. Have a hook. Be original. That's the end all be all for me.
Yeah.
And people will look at guys like Bill Burr, like Mark Maron, Joe Rogan's it does crazy interviews, but like these guys who just get on and just talk, and they go, well, I could do that. Well, yeah, you can do that, but they also built up a huge audience and had a huge fan base, and then they started doing a podcast. It's almost impossible to start from ground zero and use your podcast as a launching network, as a launching method for your fame. You're not going to do it just that way. You've got to, like Kevin said, you have to have something to say, and you have to have a product that you're selling. And if it's just you talking, people aren't going to buy into it.
Yeah, I totally agree. And there's a couple things that I'm doing is that I'm not the product. My podcast with the Lights Camera Pro podcast is interviewing directors, writers, actors, cinematographers, and asking about their careers, and they're the star, if you will. And then this video podcast, I was like, there's so many podcasters out there who are asking questions, how to start, what to do, whatever. Wouldn't they love to see how people put their podcast together and what it's like and how they build it from scratch and why they build it and how they build it, like you're saying, Kevin Gootee. So that's great. This has been great talking to you guys. If there's anything you want to add as far as your other podcasts or your websites or anything like that, go for it now.
Sure. To find out how the fudge is packed, go to guttingthesacredcow.com. There you can just click what platform you're on. We have every link separate: YouTube, Spreaker, Spotify, iTunes, everything's separated, so that way you just click it, boom. So that way, again, the iTunes people, we're all snobs, but the Google people are like, hey, what about my platform? Don't worry, we got you covered. Also on the website, we have a merch store. You can buy a shirt, hat, bag, whatever, coffee mug with our faces on it, or you can get something without our faces on it. That's up to you. And of course, Kevin mentioned before, we do the hashtag list of 10, where I'll come up with the theme. Kevin and I will come out with something. I guess what was the one we did the other day? Top 10 films that you probably skipped over, but you need to see again, something like that. Top 10 comic book villains and films. So we do that pretty much. I've got one at least 3 or 4 times a week for that. So guttingthesacredcow.com, GTSC podcast on Twitter. Gutting the Sacred Cow podcast on Instagram, Gutting the Sacred Cow on Facebook, and I'm Kevin Gootee, GOOTEE.com. Check me out whenever I get my dates back up, or more movie reviews or NFL bets I put on there during the season.
Cool. And Kevin,
and you can catch me at kevinisrael.com, and also on every Gutting the Sacred Cow thing that Kevin just said. You can also, but unfortunately, my calendar is absolutely void of any activity, as you'll see if you go to my website. So if you want to hear my comedy, you can get my album, The Struggle is Real, on iTunes and Spotify and Pandora and everywhere you can get audio.
Very cool. Very cool. And Kevin Gootee, can you just talk real quickly about your merch shop? Who are you using? A lot of people are interested in that as far as podcasters.
I'm using Spread. God, I just blanked on that. Hold on, I can pull it up in 2 seconds here. I believe it's Spread T. Hold on, sorry. Don't guess. Let's just look. Spreadshirt. Okay, I was close. Spreadshirt.com. Mm-hmm. You put your designs up there, and you figure out what you want to have, what kind of shirts. They have 8 zillion styles of shirts. So I just called one of their people, and I said, what are the top 5 in each, crew T-shirt, hoodie shirt, mug, whatever, and they just pointed them out. You can do a front or a back logo and what have you, and you select your price point and your profit margin. So it's very easy to do. It took me probably a day just to knock everything out and figure it out. So Spreadshirt is what I use.
Very cool. Well, thanks, guys. This has been awesome. It's been great meeting you and talking to you, and I'm sure that it's been great for the podcasters, but also cool for your fans and people that love your podcast, and I will definitely check out some more episodes. But thanks for doing this.
You're welcome. Thank you for having us.
Thanks. All right. Have a good one, and I hope to see you on stage at some point when I go up to New York or New Jersey. All right.
Definitely.
Take care, guys. Bye-bye.
Thank you.